Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirit, and I'm here on Zoom with 16 others. We've got a few also tuning in on YouTube. Thank you all so much for joining us live today. We're going to be talking about Kundalini with Normies. Of course, Normies referring to those people that haven't had Kundalini experience, though of course, there is no normal, right? We're all a little weird in our own way. But for tonight, we will refer to those without Kundalini experience as normies. So if you're listening to the recording in the archive, you can also join us for the next live Kundalini After Dark. Link will be in the description of the episode. You can also visit brentspirit.com/afterdark to register. If you've offered a donation at any point, I really appreciate it. It allows me to do this. Thank you all so much. As well, if you'd like to support me in another way, it's free. You can engage with the material online. You can like, subscribe, comment, leave a rating for the show. That goes a very long way. Thank you all so much. So let's get into this here. We're going to talk about, how we approach, if at all, this topic of our Kundalini experience, our spiritual experiences with people that maybe haven't had these types of experiences, maybe our friends or family. How do we relate with them? Of course, there's many different ways to approach it. I'll share some of my thoughts, some of my ideas, and then I'm going to open the floor for others to share as well. So maybe you've got some interesting ways that you've approached this topic. Maybe you've got some things to share about how it went well, how maybe it didn't go well. We're here for that. And of course, we can open the conversation up to anything related to the spiritual journey in general. So maybe you've got some questions for the group. We're here for that. Maybe you've got some responses to questions. I'll open the floor up and give everyone a chance to share. Maybe you just want to express about what you're going through and be heard by a community of people who can relate. Maybe the normies in your life don't understand you or you don't feel safe enough to open up. So we're here for that as well. So talking about Kundalini with normies, of course, Kundalini is super far out, perhaps the most far out thing of all time, right? It's really out there and it's fascinating, it's difficult, it's exciting, it can really stir up a lot of passion, right? And of course, naturally, right, those are the things we like to talk about, things that are, exciting to us, that we're passionate about, things that are difficult. So Kundalini, naturally, would be a perfect topic for people to want to express about to anyone and everyone, it seems, right? Of course, however, I'm sure we can all relate to some degree or another. It's because it's so out there, it's very hard to speak about this. It's very hard to be understood. It's very hard for, others who maybe haven't had these experiences, normies, to hold space for us, to validate, to normalize, to empathize, to even be willing to listen, right? And this can be pretty frustrating, and it can, of course, lead to significant feelings of isolation, maybe some shame, maybe loneliness, right? Maybe confusion as well. It can be very, very challenging. So, of course, it's around this theme that I've, built this community along with all of you, right? Because this is how I've felt, and I continue to feel this way to some degree, of course, though much less knowing that I have all of you out there that I can speak with and relate with, right? So, those are some of the things we'll be talking about today. So, there are some main motivations for why we may want to share about these experiences, right? Of course, there's the most fundamental one, which seems to be the most fundamental thing about being human when it comes to relationships, which is just wanting to be seen and heard, right? So maybe we're not even expressing to others, or we don't want to express to others about our Kundalini awakening because we're looking for a solution, right? We just want them to see us and hear us and not judge us, right? Say, hey, yeah, that sounds really interesting and far out and challenging, right? But of course, we may open up to certain people and they just can't really do that. And that can be pretty frustrating, right? We may also, want some validation, right? We may want some recognition because this process is so exciting. It's so transformative. It can, of course, stir up some degree of grandiosity, right? Or we want others to say, hey, you've gone through something really advanced. You must be really evolved, or you're very far ahead on your spiritual journey. That's why you're going through Kundalini awakening. And so sometimes we want to express because we want others to kind of recognize that in us, right? And of course, we can talk about it here. It's maybe a little bit of ego, maybe some grandiosity or some arrogance, right? We can talk about it. I've felt that way, Of course, it can continue to feel that way too, for sure, right? But of course, when we talk about it like this, we kind of see it's a little bit maybe unnecessary, maybe even unhealthy to a degree, to want to, get recognition from others about our quote unquote spiritual accomplishments, right? But that's another reason we may want to share with the normies, right? Sometimes we may want others to give us some sort of permission, right? To say, hey, yeah, this sounds like you're moving in the right direction. Keep going, right? So maybe we don't fully trust ourselves, our own guidance, right? So we want, others to kind of say, hey, sounds like you're moving in the right direction. Keep going with this. So we may open up to others and hope for them to kind of give us the green light, right? And maybe they don't. And then we can get really confused. Somebody we really respect, maybe, somebody older than us or more experienced than us in certain areas of life. We open up to them and say, hey, I'm going through this thing called Kundalini, sounds like this, sounds like that. What should I do about it? And they say, oh, you should run, you should stop, right? And because we trust that person, we get a little confused. We say, okay, they're saying to stop, but they've never experienced it, right? So we get a little stuck. So sometimes we are looking for some support in that way. Then, of course, we may just be looking for support in general. We may be opening up and saying, hey, I'm having a really hard time. This is scary. It's frightening. All these unusual things are happening to me. Can you help me? Do you know anybody that can help me? Do you know what this is? It's a very innocent and reasonable thing to do. Of course, when we're going through anything difficult, we turn to others in our lives, and they may happen to be normies, right? Of course. Now, fortunately, there are some people out there who are, despite being a normie without Kundalini experience, right? They may be just super open-hearted, super curious, right? They don't really have strong opinions against anything. They say, yeah, anything is possible. It sounds pretty cool. And they just are able to listen and hear us and wish the best for us and maybe do their very best to offer what they can, whether it's some support or resource, right? Even just to hear us, to validate us, right? And so some of us have those people in our lives, those types of normies. And I think they're really rare people, and then they should be cherished. They're like gems, right? Those types of people, right? But then, of course, seems like the majority of people that we may open up to about this are quick to dismiss it, maybe even criticize, judge, ridicule, or stir up fear in us. They may say, yeah, that's real. I acknowledge the validity of Kundalini, but I heard it's demonic, so you definitely should stop messing with that, right? So that can be very challenging as well. So we can have these different types of people, right? The open-hearted ones, and then those who maybe are a little bit more harsh towards us. It can be very, very difficult, especially if we're going through this without a lot of context around us, right? Without, say, a community, or without people that are maybe a little bit further ahead on the path than us that we can turn to, right? So it can stir up a lot of confusion and isolation, loneliness, right? So, of course, we're here to cry about it together, right? The normies, they can't always understand us, right? We're here to acknowledge that pain, and we're here together to hold space for that. But we can also take a one step further and empathize with people who can't really understand it, accept it, or hold space for us when we talk about these things, right? So here are some of the reasons that I have about, why people can't easily understand this, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Kundalini is it's quite a ridiculous idea, right? It's quite unusual. It's absolutely insane if you really think about it, right? You're saying that there's, some snake energy, it went up your spine, and now you're God. Like, boil it down to that. It's pretty unusual and hard to believe, right? So it's only natural that somebody would look at us and say, like, yeah, that's nonsense, right? On another level, of course, if people were to acknowledge the validity of this Kundalini phenomena, this spiritual transformation, right? They would have to then acknowledge that there's way more going on here in reality and life as for us as human beings than they might have once been taught or may have believed about the world. So this idea of Kundalini being valid would really conflict with people's worldview, whether they're experiencing it or not. And so the fact that even such a thing might be possible is so challenging to one's paradigm that, of course, denial can kick in just to protect them from having to deal with something super overwhelming, right? People don't want their whole lives to be disrupted by this idea that potentially there's this force that can be awakened that can transform and heal them and get them in touch with the divine. That's a lot for a person to take in. So they may not be open to this. So that's why they may be quick to judge, dismiss, shut down, ignore, ridicule, right? On some level, it may just be just their protective mechanisms kicking in, right? Of course, if you were to acknowledge the validity of this, if somebody were to say, hey, yeah, I understand you, you're going through Kundalini awakening, that sounds really, really exciting and interesting and fascinating. I believe you. Well, naturally, that idea is going to have to translate over to them in their own life as well. They're going to naturally have to start thinking about what does that mean for them? If such a thing is possible for another, what does that mean for them? Right? They may have to begin to engage in a lot of their own self-reflection, right? Reconsidering a lot of stuff. It's a lot to ask a person, right? Some people just, they may be truly very spiritual people, right? Totally on board with all the spiritual stuff, the yoga, the meditations, the psychedelics. Yeah, for sure. They're all on board. But then you mentioned this thing of Kundalini, and for whatever reason, they don't want to hear about it, right? They don't want to hear about it. They don't really think it's valid. A lot of defenses go up. May want to run, they may ignore, it may not even hit their radar. They kind of just tune you out when it comes to that theme, that topic. It could be just because they're just not ready at this point on their journey. And that's not to say that they're super far behind or anything. Everyone has their own pace, pace that they go on the journey. So there were times where I heard about Kundalini and I thought that's complete nonsense. Now here I am talking, all I do is talk about Kundalini, right? It just wasn't time for me. This wasn't time for me. People mentioned it to me and I scoffed at it. I said, that sounds like nonsense, right? Snake energy going up your spine, you're going to become God. Like that's nonsense. But of course, when it happened to me, I had to reconsider all of that. And that was painful. It was painful. But some people just aren't ready. And that's why they just can't hear you, right? Other people, they may become somewhat jealous, right? They may be genuinely walking the spiritual path, trying to, get really ahead, to heal, to transform, maybe to cultivate powers or to have mystical experiences. And so, they've been working at it for decades, really hard, meditating, all this stuff, right? And then you come along, you had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening and you're saying, hey, I'm having all these really far out stuff happening to me. Spirit guides are coming and spontaneous healing, and I can do some energy work with my hands and I'm seeing auras. And they hear this and of course they get jealous, right? They say, what the hell? I've been meditating and stuff for 20 years. You never even meditated for a second in your life, and this happened to you just spontaneously. That's no fair, right? So they may want nothing to do with it. They may say that's no fair, right? So that can cause some people to shut you out as well, and that can be very painful, right? Because of course, maybe you're just turning to them because you admire them, you respect them, you know that they've been on the path for a while, and you thought that maybe they could help, and they end up maybe shutting you out. It'd be very, very painful, right? So those are just some ideas. I'm curious, maybe you have some other ideas of why normies, give us a hard time at times, right? But like I said, of course, there are some who are very humble, curious, open-hearted, and they can really understand us despite having experience, right? So curious if you have any thoughts to add to this about why people may resist this topic. I've got a couple tips here for how we can approach this topic when considering about sharing it with others, right? So firstly, like I've been saying, we have to recognize this, take a step back and recognize this is a rather rare experience. It's very rare. It's unusual. It's far out. And even within this community, though we have, 20, 30 people joining us here now, we're coming from all around the world here, but in reality, like, we're still quite a rare group of people. And even within this community, there's differing views, and that's all valid, right? So it's not like everybody's just on completely the same page, because even people who say, yeah, Kundalini is valid, but I think it's like this, I think it's like that, right? So even there's some you could say differences in the way that we relate about it. So it's important that we kind of zoom out and get some context like that. Another general idea I have here, which has helped me a lot, is to recognize that though this is such a fascinating process, it's so exciting, so amazing, we can treat it in a special way. We can treat it as if it's sacred, because it is, right? So we treat it with a certain reverence, a certain respect. And the best example I could come up with was that we can treat it in the way that we may treat our sexuality, right? So even that is super exciting. It's super passionate. There's There's pleasure, sometimes there's pain, there's heartbreak, there's vulnerability, there's all these sorts of things. But even then, we don't go and talk about that with just everybody and anybody and expect them to hear us and understand us and hold space for us. And and we understand why, because it's such it's such a sensitive topic. So we can take a similar attitude as well and translate that over to our spiritual life as well. We can treat it with great reverence and respect and share it when we've really put some thought into it, some mindfulness into it, some care, some discernment into it, right? We can really kind of build up trust with somebody before we open up about some of those things. And that would, of course, make sense with sexuality. Sometimes even with health, we don't just open up about our health with just anybody, especially if we've got, particular conditions and we're doing different treatments and stuff. You don't want to open up about those things to just anybody. And you don't prod and ask somebody about those things because we recognize it's sensitive. So we can, of course, take a bit of a similar approach to the Kundalini process as well and say, you know what, this is something I want to keep close to my heart, treat it with respect, with reverence, sacred, it's personal. I share it with a few people, but they're people that I've, vetted that they'll be able to hold me and understand me in those times. I think that's a great way to do it, right? So with that said, however, I like to try and give always a balanced approach. So we can keep it personal, very sacred, right? Of course. Then there's the opposite. We have the chance with the internet to express, and our people will find us and we'll find them. And that's what we've done here, right? So if you have this inclination to share, to express, to raise awareness even, the internet is a great tool where we can express openly. You can do it anonymously. You can use an alias. You can write on a blog. You can do an audio only podcast and these types of things. And you can speak freely and express openly, and nobody necessarily has to know who you are. Right. And so that's a great opportunity that we have. And I think it's a great way to satisfy any urge that you may have to express and to be heard. And that's sort of what happened to me. It wasn't exactly by design or completely intentional, but it just, I had the overall intention to be heard. I had the overall intention to find people I could relate with. And it seems like the universe has responded and has brought you all here with me together. So I invite you as well, perhaps, you want to just express. You can really satisfy that itch with the internet. So something to consider: writing, podcasting, videos, whatever it is, right? And finally, one last point here is, sometimes we don't need to talk about this. If it's really true that Kundalini transforms us, heals us, makes us better people, makes us more compassionate and empathetic, and puts us on our purpose, right? Puts us on our mission, gets us in touch with God, makes us more present, more relaxed, well, let our life be the message of that. Let your life demonstrate that without having to explicitly speak about it. It's a pretty challenging thing to do. I understand. I'm still working on that myself. Lots of work to be done in that area. So just something to consider there. We don't have to talk about it. And there's many people who have had really far out stuff and they don't speak about it. Just their life reflects it. And so those are some things to consider. Finally, as always, I'll remind you about kundaliniawareness.org. Kundaliniawareness.org. So this website was, I was inspired to put it together to create a platform where people can express and be heard. So you can submit your story about your Kundalini awakening experience. If you like, you could submit it anonymously, and you can add it to the catalog, and others may stumble upon it and find it and relate with it and enjoy it. And you also get the satisfaction of putting together your story and having it be heard. I've also got a directory there of licensed mental health professionals with direct personal Kundalini awakening experience. So none of them are normies, right? They're people with Kundalini awakening experience, and perhaps there's a therapist, counselor, psychotherapist, social worker in your area that you can connect with and be heard and share and relate in a safe way, knowing that, of course, they understand you. So KundaliniAwareness.org is all completely free. Check it out. There's also some other peer support groups listed on the website there, where you can connect with others who understand. We've also got a list of resources as well, some books, some videos, and whatnot. So check it all out, spread it around. We'll raise some awareness about Kundalini, make it safer for all of us to express, to be heard. But for now, we've got each other here, Kundalini After Dark. So I'm going to open the floor up to see if others have some thoughts on what I've just shared here about talking about Kundalini with normies. Maybe you've got some general ideas to share about your Kundalini awakening experience. We're here for that as well. Maybe you've got some questions for the group. Maybe you've got some responses for the group. So let's go over here to Mahar and see how things are going. Hey
Hi,
there.
Brent. Hi. So I love that we're discussing this topic because the other end of the spectrum where people know of Kundalini or may know somebody who has gone through it, I've noticed that sometimes there is this idea of a certain cultural exceptionalism, right? Oh, there's only a certain one way to go through this process. And if you're not actually practicing this, your experience may not be valid. Or I've heard from a friend, this is how it happens. And I think when it was initially happening that way, I had to really just rely on my own personal wisdom about it. And I think the energy answered itself when I don't think I connected chakras with Kundalini until I felt it. I
Mm.
literally felt sitting down one day because I was dysregulated. And then I made a connection of that Kundalini energy with how the world interacts with us or how we interact with the world. So, because that energy itself guided me, I was also guided to this group after that experience to feel more and more validated about like these experiences can be just so diverse. It's not, and something like I am a Hindu and I do practice Buddhism as well. So for me, like when I noticed that, exceptionalism sort of coming in, which is also something Dr. Lawrence talks about in his soul's journey, I think that's when it became annoying. But I remember I also was told that it's in one go. And I said, I don't think that it is in one go until like this astrologer pointed me out. He said, I won't recommend that you go to anyone. I recommend that you sit longer and longer and see what's there to teach you because it's like nature making butter out of milk. And I think that experience, although like did not give me the whole answer, after a while, when I started literally feeling my chakras open, like there's actual physical action happening in meditation, only then I realized that I have to rely on my wisdom and not necessarily feel the need for it to be validated, even if the people know about Kundalini.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I love that analogy you shared there. It's like nature turning milk into butter. Beautiful. Yeah, I've come across people with a similar attitude to you where uh, they've just had such powerful experiences within themselves that like nothing anybody could say really could shake them from it. They're just so confident in what's happening. And that's really, really beautiful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go over here to Kat.
Hi, Brent.
Hey, Kat.
Hi, guys. So this is synchronistic timing for this topic 'cause I actually had something happen to me yesterday that I was probably going to share regardless of the topic. So this worked out well. Yesterday was actually my first time opening up about my awakening in a spiritual setting and it not being received the way I would anticipate it to be. And I'm extremely selective about who I share my experience and my process, my journey with. Um, so it was interesting. It was a class. There was only one other person in the class. So the other, person in the class didn't really seem to be familiar with it, but the one that was teaching the class seemed to kind of be little judgmental, and just like not receptive to it. And I feel like I didn't even share that much. And yeah, she just kind of had a look of like horror based on what I was sharing. We did a breathe meditation and she asked what our experience was like. And, I shared what the experience was like, and I mentioned my process and kriyas and head pressure and kind of just like this look of horror. So that was interesting because I would expect that in you know, like the topic, like with a normie, I would be expectant of that and also wouldn't really put myself out there like that. So, it was a good learning lesson, and I've been really fortunate thus far in when I do share my awakening with people, spiritual or normie, it is well received. And on the flip side of that, I've also shared with people who are kind of like a hybrid, like not full on normie, but not full on like woo spiritual vibe. And there was like one friend I opened up to, and this was after months of like my process being super turbulent. And I like, with a lot of trepidation, like told him about it. And he was like, oh, yeah, yeah, no, mine too. I did that like senior year of high school. So I was like, okay, I really wish I said this sooner. And similarly, like my friend's mom is also has hers awakened. So I've been extremely fortunate. But it was just interesting that in that sort of spiritual meditation setting, when we're talking about other things that would be far fetched to the normie ear, but as soon as I talk about Kundalini, it's like, whoa, that's, you know, a little off base for them. So just wanted to share. It was humbling, but it was, like I said, it was a good learning lesson to be more mindful about that in the future, even if I think I'm amongst people that'll be receptive, to not be surprised if it's not received warm and fuzzy.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that and for your courage to open up as well. I mean, in the past, it sounds like it worked out for you, right? Your friend's mom, your friend, both having experiences too. It's interesting how we find each other, right? Very interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, I feel lucky.
yeah, I think like sometimes people that maybe are teachers of like yoga and meditation, some people might get a little threatened if there's something a little bit out of their scope that comes up in the class. Maybe not threatened, they may feel some maybe insecure or they don't know what to do with it. And yeah, I've noticed that in some yoga classes and things like that on my own journey. But well, thanks for sharing. And I appreciate that you said, you know, you're still willing to open up and share and just maybe not have as high expectations, but still willing to open up.
Yep, yep.
Admirable.
I mean, you're the Kundalini awareness guy, so I'm gonna continue to spread the word and put it out there and not keep it behind closed doors. But it was my first time it being just received a little with a judgmental hinge to
Mm.
it. So I was like, okay, noted. But you know, it's not gonna keep me from doing it in the future. It was just, yeah. But I just wanted to share with you guys, and that being said, it made me all the more grateful for you and this community and this space. And like, it's just a privilege to be like, oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't be talking about this with just anyone. So I want to thank you and everyone here for always, you know, making this a safe space and making me feel seen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for helping us to all feel sane as well. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brent.
Yeah. Let's go over here to Kelly.
Hi, Brent. Thank you so much. And first, just want to express gratitude for this space you've created in your website and yeah, everything that you've created. So it's been on my radar to come here for a while, and I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you. I wanted to share a bit about sharing with normies, and then I also had a question as well.
Sure.
So my experience, I feel really blessed. I was actually in a Kundalini yoga class when I had my spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and I didn't know it then, but somebody that was there with me had also had a Kundalini awakening. I didn't know it was happening to me, but she came back and was able to help me channel the light and the energy and everything coming through me. So I was really blessed there. And then my Kundalini yoga community saw this happening, and they've been supportive as well, which I feel really blessed for. So, you know, maybe if somebody's having a hard time finding Kundalini yoga classes, could be a place of support. aside from like Kundalini yoga class and some of my closer spiritual friends, I just have chosen not to share because that's what feels safer for me in terms of normies. I usually just talk about like energy or my yoga class or things like that, and that feels good. Um, but when my question, and maybe this kind of coincides as well, is I feel some of the experiences that I'm having now post um this awakening, it sometimes they even feel hard to share with people that have had, or I think have had, or are open to channels. And one of the experience that I've had a couple times is I will get spontaneous full body orgasms. And it's almost, it sounds amazing, right? But it's almost a little overwhelming. And they can last for a very long time. And I've been really lucky. Two of them I had happen while I was just at home. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just ride this. But another one happened when I was hiking in the woods and I was just really activated by nature. But I literally sat in mud to ground myself because it was too much, to be doing in this public space. Um, so I guess I'm curious, like, if anybody else has experienced that, and then if you have, what is that? I mean, I know that it's partially Kundalini, but like, how are you working with that energy? Um, what is it like for you? What is it? Anything that you can share? Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Kelly. Great tip as well. The Kundalini yoga community could be helpful. I've heard some people, of course, report the opposite, but it sounds like you're in a great place, and the people around you are supportive. So that's great to hear. Great to hear. Curious if others have some thoughts about the topic of the whole body orgasm, spontaneous orgasms related to Kundalini awakening. See some others in the chat here are relating. You could type in the chat as well if you feel like it, and of course, no pressure. It is a bit of a sensitive topic. We've got two people here saying, yeah, they've experienced this as well. I have too. I can talk about one of them where I was engaging in the self-love practice that I do and have been doing for some time, which is just holding myself and saying, I love you with each breath. And what this did was it moved that sexual energy upwards into my heart and it exploded in like a full body orgasm. It wasn't the same as some of the other experience I had which involved like a massive Kundalini rising. This was more of just, it felt quite literally like sexual energy moving up from the lower chakras and becoming spiritual energy, like moving out of that sexual dimension and being transmuted, sublimated into something of a quote unquote higher order. Not that there's, not that sexuality is lower, but you get what I mean. And it seems like that same energy can be used for more than just reproduction or sexual pleasure. It can be used for healing, for spiritual development, for transformation, for evolution. It can be quite rejuvenating for the full body. And it seems that the body at some points knows how to and when to trigger those things. And I'm sure with some Taoist practices, with some tantric practices, people can, of course, hone the skill of triggering this at will for healing purposes and whatnot. I've had some experimentation and some inner guidance directly teaching me how to do some of this stuff, but not my forte, not something that I teach or anything, more of just like a personal little hobby, I could say. I don't know, weird hobby maybe, but cool. Let's see if anyone else has some thoughts here. Welcome, Miria and Tawny on YouTube. Aloha. Welcome, welcome. Yeah. So we've got some relating about sexy dancing, some having these experiences in sleep. Spontaneous orgasms have been difficult to understand, and for me, has also created a lot of confusion about intimate relationships. Yeah, helps us connect to our bodies. Another sharing here. 3 times. In my sleep, a signal went from my brain to my uterus. My uterus contracted many times. I don't do anything special. Put my hands in my heart, hug myself, tell myself, I love you. Beautiful. Yeah, another sharing here about intense spontaneous orgasms. Woke me up, ride the waves. On and off for a couple of years. Stop now. Fascinating. Kelly's adding here that it doesn't feel sexual, it feels spiritual, but the felt sense is similar to an orgasm. It can last for 20 to 30 minutes. Incredible. Yeah. Yeah, I like your wording there. Yeah, it's not just sexual. There's a spiritual component to it, but we don't have language, or these experiences are so uncommon that, the best we can do sometimes is refer to it within the sexual lens. That's what we can kind of relate with and understand, but there's something of a higher order here. Yeah, another sharing here. I've had sexual energy that bubbled up and became a full body experience. Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. Thank you all for sharing and relating here. Very interesting stuff. Yeah. And some others may be out there saying, I never experienced anything orgasmic. And, um, hopefully at some point things can get a little exciting and pleasurable for you. But know that for some, this journey is challenging as well. It's challenging. It's not just all fun and games. And hey, even like some others were sharing, sometimes having these orgasms and whatnot can be challenging in their own way too, believe it or not. Very intense, maybe even fatiguing afterwards sometimes. Like my Kundalini rising in 2015, I had this major rising explosion. It was like a thousand times the average orgasm, if I can quantify it in that way, in its force and its magnitude and its pleasure. But the next 6 months were like the fallout from that. The next 6 months was like the recovery period from that, to put it into perspective. So very interesting. Another sharing here. It's a daily occurrence and it has been for years. I describe it as a cross between a lightning strike and the big O. Very interesting language. Yeah, very interesting. Fascinating stuff. Thank you all for sharing. Let's go over here to Samia. Hey,
Hey
Samia.
everybody. Hey, how are you? How are you? So glad I finally caught up with y'all. I kept getting the days wrong and everything else, and then I moved once again. So thank you for what you do. Thanks, community.
Well,
Um,
thank you. Thank you. And sorry about
yeah.
all the mix-ups with the timing and all that
No,
stuff.
no,
Anyway,
no. Everybody needs their time. And then I kept getting it mixed up, and then I moved and everything else. But I'm just so glad that I was like, okay, I'm gonna make it tonight. Make it
welcome.
tonight. Yeah. So um I remember like when I was first going through I guess of the reawakening of my Kundalini, and I was with a particular person who, I didn't know I was going through, and I'm having all these kriyas and things happening, and we just, I was going to medical doctors, and this person, I didn't know what was going on. And then one day I came across the videos and everything kind of clicked. And I kept following, the little breadcrumbs that we get during this journey. And then when I finally, like, hey, I think this is what it is, this person was in complete denial of it. Like this person see all these insane things happening to me and there's no explanation for it. But and it's happened for months and months and months. And now, it was like fear-based. I understand now. It's like a year and some change later, and this person wished, we're still really good friends, even though we were intimate, we were really good friends. They have an understanding, like, yeah, like you did go through that, like, I honor that. I honor that. He even says it, yeah, before he wouldn't even say the K word. It was like
Huh.
a swear word. And now he says, yeah, you're Kundalini awake. And I'm like, wow, he said, yeah, you've gone through what you've gone through. He's seen the progression and change, and the things I had to give up in my life and how my life completely changed. And, I'm following my spirit and moved somewhere else, and like how I'm living and how my diet changed and how my body changed and how my thought process changed. And he's just like, yeah, like you have earned you know, what you're going through, your process is going through, you know. And in fact, I believe that he was actually born with the same thing, and he always thought he was just overly sensitive. He has other symptoms, but now he's looking into more esoteric or mystical things. Now he's more open because he's like, you know what, I think you're right. I said, yeah, I think you were born with it, because that's why we probably connected to begin with, you know, this journey. But so it kind of opened his eyes too, but it took a while. It took a while. This person is based on science, very intelligent, very open-minded, but it took a while. But he saw all the things I went through, from, you know, the 8-day trip I talked about, to like everything he's seen I've gone through. And he's seen how even my clairsentience and all these other just phenomenons developed right in front of him, you know, and we're still friends to today, like I said. So he's seen the journey, and he's just like, you know, his heart goes out to me. But, you know, I think he's going through the same thing too. So if it's someone that really cares about you, just give them time, you know. This you can share with everybody? No. Some spiritual people kind of understand it. You know, I'm around my cousins who's very spiritual, they're Muslim. They don't understand it, but they're spiritual, and they see my practices, they see me doing yoga, they see me meditate, and they're like, okay, she has changed since we know her since a kid. So she, whatever she's doing, you know, is former to this person that's, you know, thoughtful, more empathetic, more. But, you know, it comes with it comes with positive and it comes with negative, and I'm trying to still navigate how to deal with these um overwhelming feelings I get, especially with the clairsentience. I just feel everything. I can feel the cat thinking down the street, you know. It's wild. So it's navigating and trying to find work and listen to spirit, and it's a beautiful process at times, but it's not for the meek, and it's not for the weak at all. But it's a beautiful process. So on the good days, I just honor it, and on the bad days, I, you know, I still give it space. One of your exercises you always talk about is like giving yourself space, that container. And it's so important. And when I constantly do that, even if it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, when I do that, all the chatter in here stops, and I'm just like, okay. But it's like I said, it's been a journey. I'm grateful. I can't really wait to get to the other side. Um, I'm almost at the point where I think it is time to talk more about it, but I just don't know how. So this is interesting. This subject came up because I've been hidden for so long, like hermit mode for so long. Like, you know, it's wrong or it's a secret. My spirit doesn't like that at all either. So I have to honor my spirit too. I can't stay in hiding forever and deny, you know, what I'm going through. So it's a process, it's a balancing thing. So I just had to share that. So thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful share. Beautiful share. Yeah, it must have felt pretty good for your friend to turn around and say, hey, you know what? It's solid. It's not, I think you're onto something here. Must have felt really good.
It did.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, there was times where even I, like I said, I was in denial of this whole thing too. If my friend came to me and said this was happening, I would have been like, you know, you need help or something, you know, right? So I can empathize with those who, you know, aren't yet ready. I have a friend too. He would always joke like, Kundalini's not real. Kundalini's not real. That became like a catchphrase for him. Kundalini's just not real. And then you know, he's had some experiences and whatnot. And I think like your friend, is a little bit more on board with it. But yeah. Well, thanks for sharing even about your journey relating. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's go over here to Tom.
But the sexuality thing that was going on with the orgasms, something that I've done, and you might try it, you might not, is when it happens, sit or lie down, doesn't matter. Flex your sphincter, your anus, that is, and breathe in with your belly, flatten your belly in, pull it in, and sort of imagine pulling energy up, and at the same time tuck your chin down hard and pull the energy up into your Sahasrara chakra. You can try that. I've done it. It might have an interesting effect. the thing about the other thing we were talking about earlier was the people trying to communicate with people, the whole experience. What I've learned the hard way, naturally, like we all have generally, is to try to figure out what a person's paradigm is for understanding the world. For instance, if you're dealing with family members and their medical, don't expect, I'm according to my family members, I'm mentally ill, and according to doctors as well, which is partially true. I mean, I have a certain little constellation of of things, but no axis one things like schizophrenia or anything like that. It's more along the lines of anxiety and things like that. Anyway, but you have to kind of figure out where a person's coming from and maybe not say anything if the person's really fixed. Like the medical community, I found that way to be very fixed and don't want to hear about this kind of stuff. It's too weird and they don't get it. They can't do anything about it except give you pills, which help too. Yeah, it's about, yeah. Also, the people who are, I found, are people from the so-called desert religions, religions of expulsion, being kicked out of paradise. They have where the serpent is evil. They have a very narrow, it seemed, many of them, I say almost all of them, have a very narrow-minded point of view about Kundalini, about all that, demonizing it like everything else natural. To back that up, if one reads folklore at all, prior to the Christianity hitting or taking over Europe, toads and frogs and things like that were helpful. Most animals were helpful to humans. Give them advice, tell them, don't go here, do this, do that. Subsequently, they were all marked as evil. So anything in nature was considered evil. So that's what you're dealing with in that community for the most part. And ministers I talked to were kind of terrified and had no paradigm for it whatsoever, nowhere to stand on, no solid ground to stand on. Anyway, it's just my opinion of that. Yeah, figure out a person's paradigm and work with that, or don't say anything at all. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for unhappiness. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's great, practical insight, and makes perfect sense. Consider what their worldview or paradigm may be. Yeah, you mentioned also about some yogic practices to channel energy upwards and sort of transmuting the sexual energy up towards the crown chakra. Joe Dispenza has a practice that I believe he refers to as the breath. I recently watched a video where he describes virtually the same thing as what you described there, Tom. And I don't think that they're intending on using it solely for full body spontaneous orgasms or something like that. It's more so for healing and rejuvenation. And yeah, there may be like some orgasmic elements to it as well. But Joe Dispenza's The Breath. Now, of course, do it at your own risk. Some of these breathwork practices can be very, very powerful, maybe completely unnecessary for where you're at this point of your journey. So of course, use with caution, but it may be an area of interest if you'd like to explore. Thanks so much for sharing that, Tom. Let's go over here to Brandon.
Hey, good evening, Brent. How are you?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, I thought it's a great question that you staged to talk around tonight, and going back to a couple of the first people that spoke up, exceptionalism. I think what that brings to mind for me is, I think it has less to do with my own internal reflection on ego-driven nature in terms of the relationship between the learnings, the experiences, and in turn sharing those. I think for me, it was, wow, I have found something that helps answer so many questions that I've had, or it addresses a lot of pain that I've experienced in my life. And so who am I to hold on to this precious knowledge, right? And I think that there's such a delicate balance to me in my experiences so far of sharing with people. And I've had situations where I certainly have seen that fear factor in someone's eyes, like you're shattering their matrix right now just by the even brief mention of this, and others who are keenly interested. And then, someone earlier was speaking about, I think it was Kat, that, someone you presume doesn't know about this in turn shares, yeah, I actually had my own experience X number of years ago. But for me, when I think about this need to proselytize, the only thing that has helped me, whether it's this or prior, I kind of relate to this as a framework of knowledge that helps me metaphorically relate to the experience that I'm having. It organizes the information in a way that it helps me practically navigate. But for me, I think that the personal attachment is the thing that helps me navigate how I feel about the urge to share with others, as well as the sensitivity that I may have around their reaction to it. And so the less personal that I take my experience to this and realize that I am one of millions of people experiencing this, I'm just the latest one to show up to the show. I think just remembering to not take things too personally, not get too attached to it, to hold it as sacred and special, and to do my job in being a translation point. But that takes a little bit of pressure off of my back, and I think it also helps me feel less of the obligation. But I don't know that I can share as much in my experience about sharing so that I can get help. So most of my vantage point is wanting to share to help others. I tend to not do a great job of asking for help. And so that's where it's been interesting to hear some of the other accounts tonight. I just haven't felt that urge. I'm not saying it's not there. It's probably there and it's unaddressed, but I haven't longed for that connection with someone. So I'm curious, just reaction to that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing from that vantage point. This is very interesting. I think it's great. It's great if you're feeling like you don't necessarily need to reach out for support per se, but you're feeling the inclination to share. We need people like that as well. It reminds me of I heard at one point, even the Buddha, after attaining his enlightenment, there was some reluctance to share on his part too. He thought, people won't understand or something like that. That came up for even the Buddha. So even the Buddha had some similar feelings that we may have at times about sharing and whatnot. Though, Brandon, it's clear to me that, you're meant to share and to support. You're well spoken, you're clear, there's a certain aura about you. So I'm not surprised that that's your take, and lean into it. We need more people to share, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you do create the space for this, because I think that in acknowledging that I do have a hard time bridging the conversation with a loved one so that I can get the support that I need, I think that runs the risk of staying in isolation too long without a community like this. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there may be some parts of us as well. I'm not saying this for you. I know I have these parts too, where it's just like, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother anybody, and I'll figure it out on my own. People are busy. I don't want to burden them or put any pressure on them. That can come up too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Tracy just says here, because Kundalini caused my life to fall apart, I can't talk to people about it. How do you tell people that a spontaneous Kundalini awakening is the reason why you lost everything you built for yourself? There's a certain amount of shame in losing the productive life you once had. Yeah, that's pretty challenging for sure, right? For one, to have things fall apart. For two, for the reason for that to be something so unbelievable, right? That's a really tough place to be. I don't know if I have any answers for you. I know that in my life, There are some people that I've known for a long time. They're very understanding people. When I've had to kind of disappear at times or whatever it may be, I don't need to give them a full explanation. You just say, hey, you know, it's just really rough. And they say, oh, I understand. And they're there if they want to, if I wanted to open up more, but they don't push or prod. They're just there for me and they understand. Maybe there's some people like that too in your life. Maybe not though. And if not, that's unfortunate as well. Maybe some others have some insights for Tracy here, because it is challenging, right? It's like telling somebody like, hey, I disappeared for a little while. And they're like, why? You're like, oh, well, I got abducted by aliens. It's like, what? It's hard to believe. I don't find it hard to believe. Some people might. Hugo's got something to share here about sharing. Hugo shares, you're bringing it back to the sharing about the experience. From my perspective, it's important that we do, at least for me, because I believe that everyone will experience this at one point. It is simply our turn. Not from being a special point, but we're coming full circle. It's the end of the play and coming to know that I am no longer the character, but the creator of this experience. Kundalini is breaking apart what I have perceived to be safe. Also, the feeling of being called out or called crazy, but crazy or topsy-turvy is a dual world. It is by no mistake that we are being turned around and made to swim back to the source against the current of conditioned collective consciousness. So for me, this must be told and seeds planted for future generations that will experience their homecoming. Death won't do it, but this process will. How beautiful. How beautiful. What a great call to action, to share. Because everyone will experience this at some point in the journey in their own way. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Hugo. Okay. Let's go over here to Deborah and then we'll hear from Colin.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Once
Hey,
again, hi. Once again, an excellent topic. And I find it to be one of the unique things about this particular community that we're willing to talk about these things. I don't know if I found it through the Facebook group or if you shared it in a previous session, but or I don't know, maybe I just came across it somewhere, but a PDF about three things. Let me read the title again. 3 things to consider when sharing your spiritual experiences, and it covers a lot of these very issues. Because for myself, going way back, before I ever even heard the word Kundalini or anything really about expansive consciousness, I was born again in a Christian church, and coming from a Catholic church, Catholic upbringing, that was really mind-blowing. And of course, I wanted to share with everybody because it was just so wonderful. And then as life usually does its thing, you learn more and more about the complexities of people, about your own self. And so when I started to learn and experience more about psychedelics, I wanted to share that with everybody. And sure enough, we can levitate the Pentagon and we can bring peace. And all we need to do is drop acid in the water supply and all of this stuff. And what I've always really come back to is that there's this deep yearning inside myself, and I think in a lot of people, that we witness each other's suffering. We understand in some way that may not be easily describable that that there's more to this, and that through different experiences, whether it's dreams, spontaneous orgasms, different kinds of meditation, whatever, any type of peak experience, oftentimes you slip into that expanded or different, I don't even want to say expanded, but different state of consciousness that you cannot deny. There it is. That's certainly what happened with me long ago with sexuality. Is it became more of like all of my nervous system was engaged, and it became very much like a very predictable and easy glide of a psychedelic experience and opening. So you know, I've been considering for months now, literally months, like, what do I want to write for your website? Because I've been tossing this around. And very often, Brent, it comes back to these kinds of things, because as, at least in my own case, as different avenues have opened up, I've encountered so much resistance, betrayal, isolation, shunning, and in places that you would think that would be safe, you know? And I, as much as I try to still have compassion for those around us and what they're going through, the truth is, at least I can only speak for myself, is that there's a lot of grief that centers around not being able to just be myself, but also like, why am I in a world that it seems so distant from this very basic kind of joy that seems to be just always there, just opening up and opening up and opening up. So thank you for raising this topic, and thank you everyone for your contributions. It's really great to hear from other people.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Beautiful share, as always. I think many can relate to how you're feeling and how you have felt at various points on the journey. I know I can. I know I can. Your idea of, this, how you felt, wanting to put acid in the water supply. Yeah, like the zeal for the psychedelic experience was definitely there for me too. And then at some point, of course, that same zeal went over to this Kundalini topic, and wasn't met with as much excitement or what I hoped for in the beginning, especially. Yeah, it's an up and down journey. We'll go over to Colin in a second, but I just want to read here from Serpent Power. It's a really powerful message. Serpent Power shares here, we need to have a serious self-inquiry on why we want to talk to others about our Kundalini experiences. Do we seek their sympathy? Do we want them to reassure us that everything will be okay? Do we seek a cure? Do we want them to say, wow, you're so evolved? If we carefully do a self-inquiry, we'll discover our ego's victimhood mentality, attachment, feeling of lack, and need to control. Powerful words. Lots to think about. Thank you, Serpent Power. So let's go over here to Colin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Brent.
Hi, Colin.
Good to see everybody. I guess to be honest myself, I guess I kind of missed y'all. I don't want to share. I have no desire to share with the general public. I even have, I share in the group, and I'm grateful for that. But, thinking about sharing with people who aren't on a spiritual path, it has absolutely no interest in me. I don't feel like I have to explain myself to anybody, nor do I want to. I think people think I'm weird enough already, and on top of it, I don't think I know what's going on half the time. The second I think I got a handle on this, the bottom drops out. So who am I to really, explain? It sounds crazy to me. I wouldn't know what to say at this point right now. You know what I mean? In my journey, because I don't really have a clue. I have a clue about what happened, but I don't have a clue of what it's accumulated to, and I've been in it for what, 5 years now, so I've been around the block once or twice, I guess. I love sharing. I love talking about spirituality and our connection to the divine and all the metaphysical stuff. I love that. And I'm always baiting people, like new people I meet. And I always assume new people I meet, oh, they fell into my path for a reason. And I'm gonna try them out. And half the time I get there. Half the time, I'm able to bridge that gap and find some connection that way. But as far as Kundalini goes, I've shared with a couple people in my life. I don't have many close people in my life right now. but I've shared with like a daughter and an aunt. I think the aunt, you know, she's into yoga and breath work and all that kind of stuff. And she's listened to a lot of my metaphysical experiences and even supernatural experiences pretty well without judgment. So I sent her your kundaliniawareness.org. And hopefully she reads it. Hopefully she reads some of the stories. I've told my daughter when she started talking about Ram Dass and stuff like that, and she's listened, but who knows what she thinks, you know what I mean? But I don't know. But yeah, overall, it's like I have no idea, no inclination to share with the general public. You know what I mean? I don't want to be judged. I don't know if it's the witch wound thing. I think people have judged me enough in my life. I just don't have any reason to, have any desire to. If I saw someone that needed help, or if I could detect they were on the path and didn't know what's going on, yeah, I would definitely try to help them out, you know. But other than that, I think I'm good, you know. Like I said, it's like I have trouble figuring it out myself sometimes. So who am I to proselytize about what's happening, you know? Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, thank you for your 2 cents there. Very grounded, reasonable approach. And it reminds me of what I believe it was Lao Tzu who said, those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the hell's going on, really. I can relate. Go ahead, Colin.
Sorry, you know, it's funny when you just said that. It reminded me when I had the big, you know, explosion, the big rising experience and stuff. When I came out of it, the first thought that came to my head is anybody who calls themselves enlightened isn't really enlightened, because they wouldn't need to say it. There'd be absolutely no reason for them to need to say it. That was like the first thing that came into my head. My head was, you know, somewhere else at the time. You know, that consciousness was not Colin, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's not a problem at all. Thank you for the engagement. Yeah, even in my personal life, I think I sort of satisfy my urge to share and speak about this stuff through this work, but in my personal life, it doesn't come up. Rarely, but I try and just be grounded and masquerade as a normie. It just feels easier that way. But I think if I didn't have this platform, I don't know, I would probably explode. I need some conversation around this for whatever reason, it seems. Let's go over here to Brandon. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. I just wanted to kind of speak back, reattack what Colin surfaced there. I think that was very real, very raw, and it connects in a way to what I was sharing earlier around balancing the impulse to share. So Colin, in a way, I'm kind of speaking to you here through Brent, but I think for me, that's the crux of the matter is, am I expert on this? Do I have a right to speak to this? Versus, do I feel compelled in some way to be another channel of light, to be another translation point, not to worry about pride of authorship, expertise around it, but just to share my story. And you shared a lot that I can tell, you know, and I think I've been on another call or two with you here. I think your vulnerability, your rawness, your directness on it is something that's really valuable. And so, you know, it wasn't so much to reassure you, but I think you put words to some of what I wasn't saying when I was asking my question to Brent earlier, in terms of that imposter syndrome that creeps up, that inner critic of who the hell are you to speak to this? You novice, you just showed up to the table here, but not realizing the benefit that I could end up realizing, as well as the benefit that I can join and contribute to, versus needing to worry about being a unique translation point, but just joining that community there. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you, Colin. I think that was very real. I related to it, and I just wanted to share that came to mind, and I wasn't going to be able to put that nice and eloquently into chat there. So thanks for letting me jump back in, Brent.
Oh, of course. I love the dialogue. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you. Rebecca says here, it's so hard going through this excruciating, all-encompassing awakening like it's a full-time job. That's like a full-time job and has turned your life upside down. And everyone is wondering what's happening with you, but you literally cannot tell them what's going on. And if you did, they wouldn't get it. It's so scary and lonely. Yeah, Rebecca, you're definitely not alone in this experience. It is just like very similar to what we were speaking about earlier with Tracy as well. You know, when our life falls apart and we can't even explain to others why. That's a tough place to be. Well, thank you for opening up here with us. I think many can relate. I know I can, for sure.
Just a quick question. So I have been unable to figure out, and I know this might just be the Kundalini energy, it's just like stuck in the back of my neck right now. And I've had an experience where I felt my head would burst. And I've been like, I think almost subconsciously trying to recreate that so it does. And then it just leaves. So two-part question. What should I be doing? I'm going on grass. I'm like, I think synchronicity is wild for me, so I feel taken care of. I've woken up on days where I have no plans and I go out and somebody invites me to do Tai Chi. I've never known them. We don't speak the same language. So in that aspect, I'm very happy. It's the physical that I'm not able to sort of deal with, and I'm taking neuropathic, just the medication that helps to calm the nervous system down, because it's insane. But however, at the same time, what happens why does this energy need to even leave my body is also another question that sort of comes up, because I've experienced almost my head shattering into glass pieces, but it just never happened.
So you said you experienced it almost coming to that point, but
Yeah. Never really
Yeah.
happened. And I think I got scared and I spoke to someone at Vedanta Society and said, just don't be scared next time. And I think they were really getting exactly what I was saying. I said, my breath goes away. So they're like, yeah, just it's your mind that's in fear, but you just lean into it. And I think I've tried to do that. But now I'm dealing with the pain also. Yeah.
Right. That's challenging. I'll try not to say the same thing that the people at the Vedanta Center said to you. So breath retention, spontaneous kumbhaka is like a known yogic phenomena that can help to build up prana in an upward direction so that it can make its way up spinal column and open up that crown chakra. Easy for us to talk about it here, a lot more difficult when it's happening to you spontaneously and you don't feel safe. So I guess what's coming to me is knowing that these are known things can help. If we establish, like Samia was sharing earlier, establishing like a safe container that we go into on a regular basis, that we become very familiar with it. We know that place, that time that we've set aside is a safe time and place, is a safe container. We get very comfortable there. So then if something very unusual or scary like breath retention happens, we fall back into our knowing that we're in our safe place and it's okay. That can help during those times. Another paradigm or way I like to look at it is, when we have pressure, pain, these types of things, we can absolutely do whatever may help, some stretching, some massage, grounding practices, talking to the energy, relating with God. We can absolutely do those things to move through any pain or find some resolve and resolution. But another way I like to look at it is to see that if there's a point where there's some sort of perceived blockage, we feel the energy getting blocked in the throat or blocked in the head or blocked in the stomach or something. I don't like to think of it as a blockage. Now, some teachers may likely disagree with me, and I can understand. But my take is we're not experiencing a blockage per se. What we're experiencing is the energy working in that area on its own. and it will make its way through. And right now you're feeling the tension, the pressure, the pain, because it's doing its work there.
Mhm.
Before any of this awakening, you didn't feel anything there.
Yeah.
But the blockage was still there. So why didn't you feel it? Because the energy didn't make its way there. Now with the energy make its way there, you start to feel it. The blockage has always been there, but now it's being worked on. So it's a different paradigm to come at it from, which can help us to maybe release some resistance around any pain, tension that arises. Something to consider. How does that kind of land for you?
I think that's very spot on with me relating to what am I working through in my life. It's self-doubt and fear, and I was assigned because there was prejudice before and hatred, and that's when I experienced the heart chakra opening. So I never really thought that these two things were separated. I think my personal journey of like overcoming what I want to do in my life is very much related to my Kundalini energy working through my body, is how I understand. So what you're saying is also an opportunity for me to journal, like what am I scared of in life, what am I afraid of, and see if I feel overcome the free fall, it might just move that energy, and I'm able to, I think, yeah, synchronicity, God, yes, but that also helps. But I think there is a middle way here on like hard reflection and what really around my circumstances, around my life story, what's holding me back.
Yeah. Yeah. Great insight. This is where I'm at lately on my path and my journey is, and for a lot of it, I was sort of, what's the word? Delegating a lot of the work up to God. Like, God, just take care of it, heal me. And that worked for some periods, of course, like lots of things would come up and to be released and healed. But lately, I'm finding that I've got to go in and do a little bit more fine tuning and getting into the nitty gritty and things like journaling, contemplating, really getting into some of that stuff on my own has been what I've been asked to do lately. So I can relate with you there. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
I just something humorous. I remembered taking a course, religious studies back in university, and the professor mentioned the quote that I think Colin said earlier about those who speak don't know, those who know don't speak. I think something along those lines. And the professor pointed out, but then Lao Tzu went out and wrote a whole book about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we mentioned that before, but that was kind of ironic.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, but it must be something to it, because a few years, about a decade ago, I guess maybe a bit more, the Chinese Communist government boasted that they'd finally stamped out Taoism in mainland China completely. So that was a sorrowful thing to hear. However, it still exists other places in the world like that. Anyhow, that was my aside.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that aside, Tom. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a very valid point, you know. Whoever said that spoke, didn't they? But there's something to be said about I think Lao Tzu had a bit of a mysterious aura. And I think there's even some speculation that Lao Tzu was actually multiple people. So perhaps by maintaining some degree of anonymity, they were able to get away with speaking. I don't know. Life of the Jackal shares your question to any healers, or I guess just anyone. When do I help and heal others? I have trouble being able to tell when the right time to do those things is. I have such an urge to help and heal and use the gifts Kundalini has given me, but I feel like if I were to do it every time, I feel it would just be ego-based. So I just don't know fully how to tell when I need to take action and when I need to sit and watch. Also, it doesn't help that Kundalini and energy healing isn't always accepted publicly. Yeah, it's an interesting question. It seems to be like a common challenge for many light workers, Life of the Jackal. I know for me, my take is, and I do my best to embody it, though I'm not perfect, is basically I say, God, you gave me some gifts, you've given me some inspiration. Clearly, you want me to do some service. Give me the invitation, the inspiration, the opportunity. I'm not going to go out and chase it. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to do any crazy, work to make it all happen. I'm just going to meditate, rest, take care of myself until the opportunity presents itself, or the inspiration, or the idea, or the invitation. So far, that seems to be working. And all this work that I'm doing, I haven't put a drop of sweat into it. Clearly, I just said, God, you want me to do something? Make it easy for me. And so that's my attitude, and that gets me off the hook. I don't have to force or anything. And then I feel, very low pressure. If we say, okay, I'm going to go out and find the people to heal, now we're on the hook. Now we have to now we have to heal them. That's a lot of pressure. But if you just rest, take care of yourself, and if somebody comes to you for healing, well, you say, okay, God, you brought them to me, make it happen. And then the healing happens through you, and you're not on the hook. So that's my take on it. Hope that can give you something to play with a little bit. So check out kundaliniawareness.org. You can submit your story there. You can find a licensed mental health professional with Kundalini awakening experience. If you happen to be a licensed mental health professional with Kundalini experience, please submit an application to the directory. We'd love to have you there so that people can find you and you can offer your support. To all those that have offered a donation at any point, thank you so much. It goes a long way. It allows me to do this, allows me to support others and raise awareness and spread the word about Kundalini awakening. If you're looking for some grounding and you'd like some support, I have my course, Grounded, Spiritual Emergence and Integration. It's 8 hours of video content. You can check it out, brentspirit.com/grounded. You can check out the curriculum, the table of contents, see if something jumps out at you. And then you can also know that there's a 14-day money-back guarantee, no risk. If you don't find it valuable, shoot me a line. I'll give you a refund, no problem. Check it out. I've got some openings for some one-to-one meetings available this month. brentspirit.com/sessions if you'd like to meet with me and go deep together. And I'll be hosting a Kundalini Q&A meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you there. Thank you all so much for joining today, for sharing, supporting. Much love, everyone. Let's get some sleep, and I'll see you soon. Much love. Much love. Take care. Bye-bye now.